The Star Wars prequels were a learning experience for everyone involved, but now that we've had some time to let them simmer, some of the actors are coming out and giving us the juicy details. Welcome to Star Wars Uplink. Kylo Ren as a character, I think, was so close to perfect. I feel like he had the most character arc of any of the Star Wars sequel trilogy characters. At least he had the most depth, and I think he was one of the most deep in terms of well-rounded, not, emotionally well-rounded, but well-rounded as a character in terms of his place in Star Wars. And he had like a unique piece of the Star Wars galaxy, coming from this lineage of the Skywalkers, and then having his growth as a character through the movies, I think was fascinating, almost to have this cosplayer in the Star Wars universe. But apparently, in the Rise of Skywalker, that's where things took a shift. And I personally would agree with that, because I think the character of Kylo Ren going to Ben Solo wasn't quite the interesting thing that I would have liked to see. Because it doesn't really make sense how they set up the character for him to be remorseful and to have a redemption arc. I know the Star Wars strategy is definitely, let's give people the opportunity to redeem themselves, no matter their past, but I feel like Kylo Ren was set up in a way that wasn't going down that path. And this interview with Adam Driver, Kylo Ren's actor, says just as much.
So in the interview, Adam Driver was asked about Ben Solo and about Kylo Ren and how that whole interaction kind of happened, and just his experience with the acting part of that, of acting as Kylo Ren. And he starts off with saying how the first movie I was given this direction. I was given this arc, this general arc about how he'd be the opposite of Vader. Where he would be very insecure at the beginning, whereas Vader was very secure in his powers at the beginning, and then later on, towards the end, then he becomes very insecure as Vader, and then Kylo is going to become truly secure in the dark side. Which is fascinating. Starting as this, like, am I doing what I need to do? I know what I need to do, but I don't know if I have the strength to do it, to where he would eventually end up in this original time period of, I am so sure of myself. I know exactly what I need to do, and it is not going to be redeeming myself. It is going even deeper into the dark side. I know where my grandfather failed, and that was going from the dark side to the light side. And this original plan was, no, we're going to have him just be pure evil. That the events throughout the trilogy were going to lead to this point where he is going to be as evil as he possibly could be. And I think as a character, that works so well because it contrasts Rey's character. Rey was never tempted or even tried to go towards the dark side, except for that one scene where she is on Ahch-To and is pulled to this great power on the planet. But I don't think that was her getting tied to the dark side as it was her just following the path of the Force. Luke cut himself off from the Force and eventually reattaches himself to that after learning from Rey as much as Rey has learned from him. And I think that isn't indicative of her falling prey to the dark side, because like she's never shown anything of like temptation towards the dark side. Even the Rey dark side vision that she had wasn't even a thing in terms of like, this totally makes sense. It was very much of, this is the fear that you are so clearly running against, and you know never to go there. And I feel like having Kylo Ren as the opposite of that, and having him as just pure evil, it also would have given the trilogy an excuse to have a consistent bad guy. And maybe we wouldn't have even have needed Palpatine, honestly.
I think it would have been way more interesting if they didn't bring in Palpatine in that third movie, and they killed off Snoke in the second one, and used that as an opportunity for Kylo to go even darker, even deeper into the dark side.
To gain more power and to become this true threat. So I think it's more interesting for Rey to have a similar skilled and similar trained person as her opposite, as the villain that she's trying to defeat, than it was for Palpatine, who ended up being her grandfather and wasn't necessarily a real threat as far as things go, really. Yes, that third movie made it pretty messy. There is something also that would have been really, really interesting to see with both Rey and Kylo coming into their power in totally different opposite spectrums.
Yes.
And to have that battle, that just would have been really, really fascinating to see. And like, how does good triumph over pure darkness? You know, like how would that actually work out? How would that have played out? Because you're so similar in the complete opposite directions.
Yeah.
Because Kylo was already a force to be reckoned with at the very first. So even though he was very insecure, it still made for a really interesting bad guy.
Yeah.
And to have gone through these movies, and if he was just that much more confident, whoa, now that would have been quite the time. Yeah.
And it tracks for his character. If you look at Kylo Ren as a character from the beginning, almost idolizing Darth Vader, his grandfather, and I think it tracks if you look at his idolization of the idea of Darth Vader, and knowing full well that he did change sides and was redeemed ultimately. I think if you look at that idolization and if you analyze it so much, that paired with his hatred for Luke after the events that happened at the Jedi Temple, it makes sense for him to go even deeper into learning and analyzing the failures of Darth Vader to become even better. Because that's ultimately what he wants to be. He wants to be like his grandfather, but even more powerful, looking for something that he can control that he does not have in any other aspect of his life.
The idolization of Vader was always something very confusing to me, because it didn't really explain things very well with that. It was always just like, yeah, he was so powerful and I want to be like him. It was like, but you would have known.
Yeah, you would have.
You would have been told the story of how, no, he actually saved everyone and became this great legend that maybe no one really knows about, but he did good. Like, he was good. There was good in him. So what was the point, I guess, with how it ended, how it actually ended? You know, like, what was the point of that?
He followed a very similar arc to his grandfather.
If he just became Vader again, like, it fell flat.
Yeah, like you said earlier, it was messy. It was not necessarily the thing that I think they intended to go, and it was very clear that they took a sharp right turn in that third movie, and that was due to the second writer being added and The Last Jedi being very controversial, where the first one was controversial in the fact that it was the same Star Wars that we've learned to like love, just kind of like remix for the modern era. The Last Jedi tried to do something very new, and then Rise of Skywalker was almost trying to put the lid on the bottle of Pandora, or box of Pandora. It's like, okay, crap, we gotta reel this back in. Not necessarily doing a great job with that, but let us know your thoughts in the comments below on what was said around Kylo Ren's character in the sequel trilogy. As always, check out our podcast, and may the Force be with you.